The sky was a seething mass of bruised clouds swirling above a barren, desolate wasteland. The earth, once teeming with life, now lay broken and scorched, covered in a thick layer of ash and irradiated dust. Nuclear war had decimated everything centuries ago. What remained of humanity had long since been consumed by the cataclysm, but not everyone was allowed the peace of death. Trapped in the Afterworld, a purgatorial dimension where the souls of the damned wandered, Gray remembered the moment. He had been just a boy, but the blinding flash, the bone-shaking explosion, and the sense of all things crumbling into oblivion were seared into his memory. Now, centuries later, Gray wandered the dead land, trapped in a spectral version of the planet ravaged by nuclear fire. The Afterworld was an echo of the past, where the souls of the forgotten roamed without end. It was not a realm of fire and brimstone, but one of eternal isolation and ruin for those who couldn't move on. Gray wasn't alone, though. There were others like him, survivors in spirit form, each cursed with their own reasons for remaining tethered to this twisted existence. Among them was Lyra, a hardened survivor from the same time, her ghostly body covered in the tatters of a military uniform. She had been a leader of a resistance group, but when the bombs rained down, there was no war left to fight. "We need to get out of this place," Gray muttered one night as they gathered around a fire made of spectral embers, giving no warmth. They had discovered that even in this afterlife, they could still feel exhaustion, hunger, and cold. It was a cruel mimicry of the life they had left behind. Lyra's eyes, glowing faintly in the dark, looked at him with a flicker of hope. "You really believe there's an escape from this?" Her voice was hoarse, like the wind scraping across the desert of their world. Gray nodded. "I've heard rumors, whispers from the shades. Some say there's a rift in the sky, a tear between worlds. It might be our only way out." Lyra frowned. "You think it's real? Or just another lie to keep us from going insane?" "I have to believe it's real," Gray replied. "It's the only thing keeping me going." Over the next few weeks, Gray and Lyra gathered a small group of wanderers, ghosts like themselves who had grown tired of the eternal purgatory. Among them was Arden, a former scientist who believed the rift was more than just a myth. He spoke of dimensional shifts caused by the nuclear devastation, pockets where reality was thin and could tear open. The rift was one such tear, he theorized. "We'll need to cross the wastes," Arden said one morning, his translucent fingers tracing a map on the ground. "That's where the rift is supposed to be, near Ground Zero." The wastes were the most dangerous part of the Afterworld. It was where the full impact of the nuclear destruction had left the land twisted and hostile. Creatures roamed there, monstrous things made of radiation and sorrow, hunting anything that dared to cross. "Then, that's where we're going," Gray said, determination hardening his voice. The journey was grueling. Days and nights blended together in the unchanging gloom, and the further they traveled, the more oppressive the air became. The wastes were not just a physical challenge, but a psychological one. The souls of the dead screamed in the wind, their lamentations tearing at the minds of those who passed through. One by one, members of their group began to falter. Some simply vanished into the mist, claimed by despair. Others were taken by the creatures that prowled the darkness, leaving only echoes of their final moments. But Gray, Lyra, and Arden pressed on. They had nothing left to lose. After what felt like weeks, they reached the heart of the wastes. There, suspended in the dark sky, was the rift. It was a jagged tear of light, pulsing with energy, a scar in the fabric of reality itself. But their path to the rift was not clear. A massive figure loomed before it, a warden of the Afterworld, a being forged from the very essence of nuclear fire and suffering. It was a twisted amalgamation of the souls and radiation that had consumed the earth. "We have to distract it," Lyra whispered, clutching a rusted spectral knife she had carried since the war. "I'll go," Gray said, standing tall, despite the fear gripping him. "You and Arden get to the rift. I'll hold it off." Lyra's eyes softened for a moment, but she knew there was no other way. "Thank you," she said quietly. Gray charged at the warden, his ghostly form shimmering as he called upon every ounce of his will. The creature roared, a sound like the tearing of mountains. They clashed in a furious storm of energy, Gray's form flickering as he fought with everything he had. Every blow sent waves of pain through him, but he knew this was his only shot. As he battled the Warden, Lyra and Arden ran toward the rift. Arden quickly activated the device he had been working on, a makeshift dimensional key built from scraps of knowledge and memory. The rift pulsed in response, widening. "Come on, Gray!" Lyra shouted, standing on the edge of the rift. Gray, locked in combat, glanced back at them. He knew this was his last chance. With a final surge of strength, he broke free from the Warden's grip and sprinted toward the rift. The Warden screamed in fury, but it was too late. Gray leaped through the rift just as it sealed behind him, cutting off the monstrous entity forever. On the other side, Gray collapsed to the ground. The air was clean, the sky a brilliant blue, and the sun shone brightly overhead. They had made it. They were free. But as Gray looked around, his heart sank. The world he had escaped to was not the world he remembered. It was a new place, untouched by war, but eerily silent. Lyra and Arden stood beside him, gazing at the unfamiliar landscape. "Where are we?" Lyra asked, her voice filled with awe and uncertainty. Gray didn't have an answer. They had escaped the Afterworld, but this new world held its own mysteries. A new journey had just begun.